Okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. Sorry we're late. We had a closed session that we're coming out of, and so I will call our meeting to order, and we'll have a roll call by our Assistant City Clerk, Amanda Lee.
Let the record reflect all members are present with the exception of Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Okay, and our Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by our City Attorney, Daryl Piper, and if everyone will please rise for that. And tonight our invocation will be led by Pastor Tom Strader of the Grace Presbyterian Church. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for this day that you have made, and we respectfully come and humbly come before you. We thank you so much for your presence this evening, and my prayer is that you would give wisdom and guidance to our elected officials, that they may have ears to hear from the people of Vista. We do thank you so much, Lord, for this wonderful city that you blessed us with, and may we be good stewards of the gifts and talents and those who are running the city. Lord, we ask that you would bless them. We pray this in your gracious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
In accordance with the Brown Act, I'd like to announce that as a result of convening simultaneous meetings, the members of the Buena Sanitation District will receive compensation of $147.75 for the district meeting pursuant to the Buena Sanitation District Ordinance 2006-1. And the next thing is the approval of the agenda by our city manager, Patrick Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. There's one change tonight, and that is the removal of presentation item P1, which is for the law enforcement awards. We were not able to get the people that were receiving the awards here tonight, so we will reschedule it for August 11th.
Okay. And our city attorney, Daryl Piper, will bring us out of our closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The council did meet in closed session on the item on CS1 on tonight's closed session agenda. No action was taken that's required to be reported.
Okay, and on our presentations, as City Manager Johnson announced, that our law enforcement awards have been canceled and be rescheduled. The next thing on our agenda is our consent calendar, and tonight we have 28 items on our consent calendar, so it's going to take me a minute here to find out which ones are going to be pulled. And I have one item pulled, item C16, by the public, and so I'll ask the council which items that they would like pulled. So I guess I'll, okay, Councilmember Rigby.
Thank you.
Sorry.
C19, please.
Is that it? Is that the only one? Anybody else here? If seeing no other ones pulled, I would ask for a motion for the balance of the consent calendar.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
The city clerk vote my no vote on item number C22, Parks and Rec Commissioner applicant number 3.
And also, if the city clerk could record my no vote on C24 and my abstention on C22.
Okay. So that motion, the motion on the balance of the consent calendar passes unanimously with the, except for the two things that you said that will show the city clerk will record. Do we get all that? Are we all set with all that? So if that, we'll move on, and the next thing we will be is item C16, which is our, hold on, it's our 2015 Justice Assistant Grant.
And would you like a presentation or just to hear from the speakers?
I think we could have just a short presentation on that.
Okay. Our Redevelopment Director, John Meyer, will introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, my name is John Meyer. I'm the Redevelopment and Housing Director, and giving the presentation tonight is Kathy Valdez, our Program Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. The item before you is the approval of the application for the 2015 Justice Assistance Grant. The Justice Assistance Grant Program is a formula grant from the Department of Justice designed to enhance law enforcement programs within the community. Staff recommends funding the Junior Deputy Academy, a 10-week character-building program for youth between the ages of 6 and 17. While in the program, youth learn about decision-making skills, good citizenship, the importance of discipline, and the role of the Sheriff's Department in the community. A total of 3 Junior Deputy Academies will be conducted utilizing the 2015 JAG grant, reaching a minimum of 120 youth. The expected outcomes of the program are improved decision-making skills and comfort level with law enforcement personnel. Funds will also be used for equipment services fees, as well as to cover costs for training opportunities for deputies in the Vista Station. That concludes my report. I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll take our speakers next. Mary Jo Poole.
Oh, Amanda.
And where's the green light? Okay, you ready? Thank you very much, City Council members and the sheriffs, for thinking about our youth and our community. It's very important and something near and dear to my heart as a community member. However, this grant shows very clearly that there are structural issues in this community that need to be addressed, including poverty and housing. And that's actually used as the justification for these grants, yet the grant is focused on individual behavior and character building as if our kids don't have character. The kids in this community have a lot of character. The fact that they survive is character. Moreover, a rough estimate, when you look at the numbers, the 181 gang members that are used to justify this grant include people who have been on the gang list for, forever. Because once you're on a gang list, you don't get dropped off. So the question is, who are actual active gang members in this community? If you look at a rough estimate of the Latino male from 7th grade to 12th grade, 181 gang members represents 0.05% of Latino male in this community. The consolidated plan itself, for the second point, shows that there has been a 25% increase in domestic violence between 2008 and 2012. And there is nothing in the plan that addresses that specifically. My question to the council and to the sheriff's department, perhaps domestic violence influences what happens with our youth in this community. And I want to make clear before somebody jumps on this, domestic violence is not a cultural issue, so please don't make it a cultural issue of the Latino community. It is a community issue that cuts across all economic, all race, all ethnicities. Finally, the Presidential Task Force on 21st Century Policing recommends that the governments and law enforcement actively engage in the community, including the critics, to move forward in a positive way. I hope that the council will institute both public hearings and a community advisory board for this community to address the structural issues and not just make our kids compliant towards the sheriffs. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Freddie Avelos.
Good afternoon, good evening, City Council, Judy Ritter, and Vista Sheriff's Department. I thank you for the wonderful work that you do in our community. I need to say this. Vista is a city that continues to be riven by racial tension. This Justice Assistance Grant illustrates the fundamental disconnect between the city, the Vista Sheriff's Department, and the people that they serve. This disconnect is even more pronounced in a large segment of the Latino community. We have to remember that policing is a transactional endeavor. It requires that trust building from both the officers and the community that they serve. The grant is written in part to teach, as Mary Jo just pointed out, is written in part to teach character building skills to Latino youth and their parents. It goes on to include discipline, the sense of discipline for both. This assumes that the primary problem in Vista lies with Latino youth and Latino culture. As a Latina and a citizen of Vista, I find this very insulting. At this time, particularly at this time, the idea that the Vista sheriffs, who are currently being investigated by the Department of Justice, 2 probes, the beating of Antonio Martinez, a Down syndrome youth who lives in my neighborhood, and also the beating of a local college student. And as you know, a civil suit was just completed yesterday about the killing of Elward White, a black man who seemed to be having a psychotic break, that the Vista sheriffs are now being charged with character building is disturbing and unacceptable. Further, I would like to ask, what are the qualifications? The grant does not indicate qualifications. What are their pedagogical strategies? What is their educational background? What is what kind of curriculum development experience do they have? So my recommendation would be that the grant is rewritten to provide cultural proficiency training to the Vista sheriffs, right? Which would include an intense training in unconscious bias. This will go a long way to establish trust with the Latino community and remind the Sheriff's Department and the City Council and the larger community that police work is a partnership with responsibilities on both sides. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Actually, I've attended many of these graduations of the kids. There were like, I think the last class was the largest class ever. Lots of parents and lots of kids. No mention of it just being only Hispanic. It's for any youth who's between the ages of 6 and 17. So, do I have any speakers on my council that want to talk for this? I would make a motion to approve this. What?
I was actually going to make the motion for approval, but
Oh.
I'll second your motion.
Sorry, I didn't see your thing there.
But thank you for your comments.
Okay, please cast your vote. That motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Aguilera absent, excused. Next thing on our agenda will be item C19, which is the Encina Wastewater Authority budget for fiscal year 2015-16. Would you like a report, Councilmember Rigby?
I don't particularly need a report. I just thought I would voice my opinion or my thoughts on this item. Sometimes you need to explain why you do what you do, and I thought this was one of those times. This is the agenda item for the Encina Wastewater Authority budget for the fiscal year 2015-16, and this did come before the board for the Encina, which the mayor and I both sit on to represent the city as well as Buena Sanitation. And this budget proposal had come before the committee, both of the committees that Encina has, as well as the board of directors. And there were some issues that were discussed in the committee as well as at the board level for positions that were and were not both included in the budget. And it was still presented to us to vote on today in its original form, although we had assurances from the general manager at Encina that the one position, particularly for a plant engineer, would be included and would be addressed. And then they said, please, go ahead and approve the budget anyway. We'll put it in. We just don't want to hold up the budget. I have a problem with the way that was done. I think there was plenty of time after discussions at the committee meetings, at the board meeting. I know that Encina management also met with member agencies about these particular issues. I think there was plenty of time for this budget to be presented to all of the agencies with accurate reflection of what would be done or what intends to be done. So at the board meeting, I voted no on this agenda, on this budget, and I will do so again tonight because I don't like that it does not include what we were promised would happen. Not that I don't trust anybody, I just would like to see if you have the time to do it and you want it done, it should be in here before you ask us to vote on it. And I'm talking about Encina, not you. So I'm still going to vote no on this because it does not address what we asked specifically for it to address. We were just assured, go ahead and vote yes on it and we'll take care of that later. And to me, that is not the way we do business in Vista. So this is going to have a no vote for me. So thank you.
And I'm going to support it just because even though that it isn't in there, it has to, anything has to come to us for their approval. It has to come back to our Encina board, not here, but our Encina board for approval. If they're going to put an extra position in there or any extra positions, it has to come to our board for approval. So there is extra money in that budget, but I think that they can't use it unless it comes to us for approval. And if they want to put an engineer in there, then that would be part of that money that's in there. And there's all, I'm going to approve the budget because there's all sorts of other things that go into the budget besides just that one thing. It has to run the whole entire agency. So I'm going to go ahead and vote for approval on that. And then when those things come to us, we'll look at those when they come. So that's mine. Councilor Campbell, did you have something?
I was going to ask the city manager. We spoke a little bit about this yesterday, but maybe if you could elaborate on Councilwoman Rigby's comments a little bit about what that request was initially.
I think, and not putting words in Councilwoman Rigby's mouth, basically at Encina there were some issues over position allocations, and the Encina board directed the general manager for Encina to not go forward with the position allocations and come back with better descriptions, I would say, on the reasons why those positions were needed. At the same time, the way their budget process works is that their budget is adopted in a separate resolution. So while the general manager wasn't given authority for the 4 positions or the future 7 positions, as it were, the budget was adopted by the board with the exception of Councilwoman Rigby, and the amount of the overall budget stayed the same. Mm-hmm. So it included those new positions that were requested, even though the general manager is not authorized to go forward with them at this time. The one caveat to that is Vista and a few other agencies requested that Encina bring back a plant engineer, which they used to have, a position that we think is valued and needed in the organization. And the district manager has not, as per what Councilman Rigby stated, has not updated the budget per that, but has given a verbal to myself and staff, as well as at the Encina board meeting tomorrow, is, according to what he said, we'll give a verbal to the board that he will be bringing back the plant engineer position, and that's why we put it in the agenda report summary, and that's our expectation.
Can this approval be made contingent upon that actually happening within a reasonable time period?
I think the way, and possibly Mr. Nielsen or Alex could answer it if I don't do the correct job at it, but I think the way it works is they need a budget resolution from each member agency to go forward with their budget. If one of the member agencies hold that in abeyance or do not go forward, then the entire Encina budget doesn't go forward, and they need to go back to the board, re-approve a new budget to bring back to all of our member agencies for adoption. And so holding that in abeyance or suspending it, I don't think would work for their budget process to have an adopted budget before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Councilman Rigby, you're on there again. Did you want to say something again?
No, I guess I made my point. I understand that the budget has a lot of things in it, as an annual budget will. I just didn't like the answers I got. I don't think that's the way that one does business, and they should clean it up a little bit before they give it to us again without the corrections that they promised would be in it. So I understand the concept and the importance of it, but it's just not the way we do things. They had ample time. They knew it was an issue. They promised they would do it, and it didn't get done. And the 7 positions and the 1 position, when you talk about in the budget and what's allocated versus what's hired, there were different answers for each of those items. The rationale between putting the 7 positions in and not the 1 position, and we can do the 7 positions, but we can't do the 1 position or the other way, that didn't make any sense. They were absolutely contradictory on how they were handling that situation, or the 2 different situations. So that's just where I'm at with it.
I agree. I think one of their issues was that they need to approve it by the end of June 30th, and it would have to go back to the board again to be approved, and then come back to us, as approval. And that we couldn't do it. If it went to the board, it would be tomorrow, and then it couldn't come back to our board until August, and they needed to have a budget approved by the end of the fiscal year. So I think that was part of the problem of why they couldn't redo it. They couldn't just redo the budget and then send it out. They had to redo it and then send it to the board, your committee, the financial committee, and then then also to the board first, and then come back to us. I think that they would have had to do that to change anything in it. So,
To our committee twice. So it had been a discussion item at our committee 2 times. So that's what I'm saying. There had been plenty of time. So them saying that they didn't have enough time, I disagree with that. So, anyway.
okay,
If
so
I may make,
And if I just to chime in to complete the picture maybe is,
Yes.
I think that message was delivered loud and clear, as well as by the member agency staff, as well as a conversation I had with the general manager. And so I'm hopeful that in the future, the communication effort will improve at that level.
Okay, so where are we? So I guess I'll make a motion for approval of the budget. Cody?
I was going to make one quick comment.
Councilmember Campbell?
I'm going to second that motion. I definitely understand what Councilwoman Rigby is saying, but should I not vote to approve this item, I think it would cause a disastrous consequence in terms of their budgeting process.
Yeah.
And if the city manager could continue to communicate the message to them that they need to improve upon those deficiencies, that would be best. So.
I absolutely agree. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. So please cast your votes. Okay, that motion passes with one no vote. Councilmember Rigby. Moving on, public hearing. This is a public hearing to receive public testimony regarding the levy of assessments on the 2014 property tax roll for the collection of delinquent 2014 weed abatement charges. So the public is now open. I don't have any speakers so far, so
Would you like a report?
do you need a report? No. Okay. Then I'll close the public hearing, and do I have a motion?
I'll move to close the public hearing and, accept the recommendation.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Aguilar excused. That brings us to our oral communications. I don't have any oral communications this evening either. So then that brings us to remarks. And I'll give you my little announcements here. So as we get into the hotter months of the year, I wanted to make sure everybody knows that our library at 700 Eucalyptus Avenue has been designated a cool zone by the county. In the summer, San Diego County designates cool zones, air-conditioned settings where seniors and others can gather. The library would be a good place. You can go in there and read a book and stay cool. The sites encourage people to share air conditioning during the heat of the day, lowering the individual usage and helping to conserve energy for the whole community. So you can visit our website, www.cityofvista.com, for a list of all the county cool zones. Taste of Vista is tomorrow evening, June 24th, and runs from 4 to 8 p.m. in the downtown area on Main Street. And ticket information is available at vvba.org. The city's Independence Day celebration, 4th of July, takes place at Bringle Terrace Park. And the park opens at 7 in the morning, and the Moonlight Amphitheater opens at 5 p.m., and the fireworks begin at 9 p.m., and the information is online also at our city website, cityofvista.com. And one other thing, the next free movie in the park is Saturday, July 18th at the Vista Sports Park, and this movie is going to be Planes, Fire and Rescue, and the final movie, Big Hero 6, is on August 8th at Bringle Terrace Park. So the city's Summerfest and Safety Fair will be held before the August movie, and the details around that are online also at cityofvista.com. So anyway, so this movie is July 18th, which is Planes, Fire, and Rescue. And that's the announcements I have. And then I just had a couple of things that I wanted to say. And at Sandag last week, they had a very interesting presentation at my transportation committee. The Bay to Balboa, they're trying to do a skyway. They're looking at doing trams that go, and they said it'll take one lane of freeway off the highway if they can get the skyway to work. And at first people thought it was a crazy thing, but they have it in other countries. They have them. So I was trying to think if there's any way we could get people like from downtown to Bringle Terrace Park. Actually, you can get cap and trade dollars for things like that. If it's under $75 million, there's cap and trade dollars for something if you can take, for the greenhouse gases, to reduce greenhouse gases. And the tram holds like, I think it said 6 or 8 people, and it just takes you and lifts you up, and you don't need to, it can go over the top of roads or trees or whatever. So it's it was an interesting concept. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they're working on that in San Diego to do that down there. And then the other thing I was going to, that made me actually furious, well, one other thing at San Diego, we got a grant from San Diego that we voted on at Transportation, which has to go to the Board of Directors. We got a $2 million grant for Paseo Santa Fe Phase 2, which is great. So, but it looks like we have a match of $5 million, and so that should get our Phase 2 started on Paseo Santa Fe, which is very exciting, I think. And then the last thing, which will make everybody probably upset, there's three bills going to this will get you guys going to the, up to Sacramento. And one of them, AB 744, it doesn't recognize that seniors, low-income men and women, special needs residents and workers, as well as market rate homeowners, still use cars. They're giving a complete exemption for senior housing for any parking, or for complete exemption for housing for lower income residents if it's near transit. So that you could build a project with no parking, or there's an exemption for special needs populations with no connection to transit. So it just removes any parking baseline from housing projects. And so it eliminates any local parking requirements. So I thought that one made me upset because that's like right now you look at the apartments and people are lined up in the roads, and I know that Amanda, you and I are always having a big thing about parking in apartment complexes or multifamily complexes. And the next letter was one that would prohibit local agencies from enforcing laws of people sleeping or resting in a lawfully parked motor vehicle, which is, lawfully parked could be in a residential neighborhood. It doesn't mean it's acceptable for people to live there, but they could be sleeping, on your neighborhood. They could park there at night and sleep overnight, which is, then what about sanitation? And they can live in their homes, anywhere. It kind of, so I thought that one kind of upset me. And then the third one was, this was SB 239, which would place agreements between public agencies to provide fire protection services under the purview of LAFCO, which is local agency, for commissions. And it also requires contracting the local agency to receive written permission from the recognized LAFCO agency to extend fire services outside its service area. So I don't know what that would do to our border drops, but that was, and I was like, what is going on in Sacramento that they're doing these things that affect us down here? So anyway, with that, I will move on down the line here. How about Councilmember Campbell? Do you have anything today?
No comments this evening.
Councilmember Franklin, nothing? Councilmember Rigby? Nothing tonight? Okay, you've got, well, with that, our city manager, Patrick Johnson.
Just have a few updates, Mayor. Thank you. The San Diego Humane Society's mobile veterinary bus will be on site at Buena Vista Park this Saturday from 10 to noon, and they'll be offering vaccinations and microchipping. So if you're interested, that'll take place this Saturday. If you have household chemicals to dispose of, you can take them to our household hazardous waste site, Taylor Street, and you go to cityofvista.com to find out more. The HHW facility, as we call it, is open on Saturdays from 9 to 3. And as you approved this evening in the Cal Recycle item, I think it was C14, there's a grant which allows for 13 different businesses within the city that if you don't want to just go to the HHW facility on Saturday from 9 to 3, you can go to any number of those 13 businesses, which will be posted on our website tomorrow, and you can drop off your used oil and used oil filters. So it's more convenient for our residents, and we have a number of businesses in the city participating. And then lastly, our next meeting won't be until August 11th, as we typically go dark in July, and so I wish everybody a great summer from a council meeting perspective. We will continue to talk.
Yeah. Doesn't mean we don't have other meetings like San Diego and Encina and all those other meetings. Nobody else goes dark, just our council. Okay, City Attorney, Darrell Piper.
Happy summer, one and all.
And our Assistant City Clerk, nothing? Amanda? Okay. Okay, with that, we are adjourned at 6:16.